we're divorced and I'm the one who will be getting the money thanks to alimony. You don't have any say in this.
Jack said that and left the hospital room. "Wait!" I yelled out, but Jack didn't seem to hear it and left the room. And that is how I became single, with cancer still plaguing me. But for some reason, the knot in my chest seemed to have untangled. Perhaps by this point, my love for Jack had already cooled down. Jack, who toyed with me and continually acted selfishly, deserves divine punishment. That's what I thought, and I began to plot my revenge. My name is Emma, a housewife in my 50s. I live with my husband, Jack. We don't have any children, and since our marriage, I believed we had been supporting each other. At least, that's what I thought. However, a chasm had formed between Jack and me, one that might never be bridged. My ideal image of a married couple is that we still stick together through good and bad, supporting and sometimes even challenging each other to be better. But there was none of that between us.
Hey, where's the food? I'm in a hurry here.
I had been out on an errand. When I came home, Jack, who had the day off, peeked out of his room and demanded his meal. There's no day off for a housewife. If I slack off for even a day, our daily life would become unsustainable. Jack, a regular office worker, has his days off, but he would only use those days for himself. Even when I was swamped with tasks in our 30 years of marriage, Jack never once helped out.
Housework is a housewife's job, isn't it? Doing your job without slacking off is just what's expected of a working adult.
That was Jack's stance. Even when I was feeling sick, Jack never allowed me to take a break from housework. There were times when I was down with a cold, finding it difficult even to get out of bed. But even during such times, when mealtime approached, Jack would come to his room and demand,
"Where's my food?"
He never showed any intention of taking care of me when I was sick. On the contrary, he would say,
"I have plans with friends."
Leave the house alone, go out drinking with friends until late, and come back home drunk. There was no love or support between us. However, Jack and I had vastly different understandings of what a marriage should be. I tried various ways to bridge this gap in our early days of marriage, but no matter how much I tried to talk to him, Jack never admitted he was wrong. He would sharply rebuke me, saying,
"Don't complain, you're just a housewife."
My love for Jack had long since cooled. It's not that I wanted to rely on Jack. I'm a human being too and have my hard days. I just thought he could support me during those times. But Jack never showed any empathy. From the moment I realized this, the distance between Jack and me continued to grow. Gradually, I didn't even feel like confronting Jack, and as days went by, I even began to dread facing him. Our cold marital relationship. I knew better than anyone that there was no good in continuing this relationship. Amidst all this, something unusual happened to my body. While I've always been prone to falling sick, this time I felt something was clearly amiss. I contacted my father, who was at my ancestral home, and he took me to the hospital. The doctor diagnosed me with cancer. Fortunately, it was detected early, so there was a chance of recovery. Wanting to get started on it as soon as possible, I asked my father to bring the essentials from home, and I immediately went through the admission procedure. Jack was at work, so I briefly informed him via message that I had been diagnosed with cancer and was being admitted to the hospital for treatment. To be honest, when I heard the word cancer, I imagined a difficult treatment and a painful battle. I was extremely anxious about the future ahead of me. And during such times, the person who came to my mind was Jack. I thought the love had completely cooled, but somewhere deep inside I might have still wanted to face Jack and spend time as a married couple. Given my current weakened state, even someone as cold as Jack, who never once showed concern for me, might worry. He might ask,
"Are you okay?"
He might say kind words. Just one visit would have been enough. I wanted to see Jack's face, even if it was just once. I wondered if he struggled with daily life without me around. Now I felt guilty for not being able to do household chores, but no matter how many days I waited, Jack never showed up. My messages were marked as read, but not even a simple reply like "okay," let alone the words "are you okay," was sent back to me. It felt as if he didn't care about me at all. Despite my cancer, despite how weak I had become, Jack showed no signs of caring about me. This reality weighed heavily on my mind, and it was unbearably painful. I know I was foolish to have expectations, but was it so wrong to want my husband to care for me when I'm struggling? Where did it all go wrong? I never intended to burden Jack. I simply wanted him to worry about me, to care for me, just a little bit. Even that small selfishness wasn't allowed to me. I should stop expecting anything from Jack. With that resolution, I fiercely battled my cancer. As expected, the fight was sheer agony. The medication administered was undoubtedly breaking my body down, and I spent countless nights unable to sleep due to the pain. Several times I considered stopping the treatment, letting my deteriorating body continue to break down and just facing the end. Every time my parents would say, "It will definitely get better," and because of those encouraging words, even when my will faltered, I managed to push through and make it to today. One day, while I felt unwell and was blankly staring at the ceiling from my bed, the door to my room suddenly swung open. I wasn't expecting my parents to visit that day, so I wondered who it could be. I turned my gaze and saw Jack. Had he finally come to see how I was, out of concern? Seeing how emaciated and drained I had become, wouldn't he despise me even more? Numerous thoughts raced through my mind, rendering me speechless. Ignoring my reaction, Jack sat down on the chair next to my bed, quietly observed me, and then laughed.
"So, cancer does this to you, huh? You look terrible. Hardly like a woman at all."
Those words sent a chilling shiver down my spine. Of all things, he shouldn't have said that to someone who's still battling cancer. I wished he would just shut up. But disregarding my feelings, Jack continued with even more hurtful words.
"Ever since you've been gone, every day has been wonderful. Sure, the house is a mess, but I hardly ever go home. Life without you is surprisingly easy."
Jack's cruel words wounded me further. Why did I have to hear such words? Why wasn't there a single comforting word from him? I wanted to lash out at Jack, but my weakened body wouldn't cooperate, leaving me any choice but to quietly absorb his painful remarks. I stared at Jack with vacant eyes. Noticing my gaze, Jack chuckled mockingly. Then he said something utterly unbelievable.
"By the way, I've already filed for divorce. I'm taking the house as property division. You don't get a say in it."
The room seemed to spin at his words. He filed for divorce? Without my consent? Why? Before I could gather my thoughts, Jack continued.
"I've fallen in love with someone else. She's 20 years younger than me, but I'm serious about her. You're in the way of us being together."
Does this mean he had an affair? Such thoughts raced through my mind, but Jack, perhaps having said his piece, began to prepare to leave. Wait! But Jack paid no heed. There was no love left for me in Jack's heart anymore. The pain in my chest became so intense that I just didn't care anymore. Fine. With that one sentence from me, Jack left the room with a satisfied smile. After that, I fought even harder against my illness. Even with all the pain, I was determined to fully recover from cancer and became even more dedicated to my treatment. And so 2 days passed. It might seem short, but to me, who could hardly sleep at night, those 2 days felt very long. I was tormented with uncertainty. Did Jack really finalize the divorce as he said, or were his words just meant to play on my anxieties? Perhaps there was no divorce at all? The one thing that kept me going was a secret plan to completely expose Jack. I knew once he found out about it, even someone as cold-blooded as Jack would be shuddered. I believed that a flustered Jack would surely try to contact me. With that in mind, I waited, and sure enough, Jack called me today. I couldn't take the call in my hospital room, so I ignored the first hundreds of calls. He didn't seem to give up trying to reach me. Despite my phone being on silent mode, the constant vibrations were annoying, so I texted him, "Stop calling, it's annoying." Finally, the calls ceased. But then the messages started pouring in.
"Please, I want to talk. Just once. I'll apologize for everything."
And many more. If he couldn't reach me by call, he'd tried to text. Every single message was clearly out of self-preservation. Perhaps Jack had realized why I had so readily accepted the unilateral divorce.
Can I come see you?
When I didn't respond, Jack, perhaps growing impatient, sent that message. Honestly, given my current exhaustion from fighting my illness, the idea of meeting Jack was almost torturous. However, I figured if I declined, he'd incessantly call, so I replied, fine. My revenge plot was about to begin. Jack, who had treated me poorly for so long and even forced me to divorce, deserves a harsh punishment. Eagerly anticipating Jack's arrival, I was determined to bring him down.
Hey, what the hell are you thinking?
With that outburst, Jack entered my hospital room. His voice clearly revealed his panic, showing that he was already feeling cornered. To an outsider, Jack's reaction might seem a bit over the top, but it was only natural for him to be this frantic. After all, I had a secret ace up my sleeve.
I had no idea you had assets worth $6 million. If I knew about this money, I wouldn't have... Why didn't you tell me?
Saying this, Jack placed my bank book on the table. The book clearly showed that I had over $1 billion saved up. Well, you never asked.
Who would imagine that a housewife like you would have this kind of money? If I had known about this money, I would have never divorced you.
Maybe you shouldn't have impulsively forced me to divorce.
Don't play games with me. And where did you even get this kind of money from?
Jack, who unilaterally divorced me without my consent, was now complaining that he'd have acted differently if he'd known about my $6 million. It was so self-centered of Jack to assert he'd have changed his decision if he had known about the money. I decided it was time to let Jack in on the secret. Actually, the source of this $6 million was from investments I began as a mere pastime. The one who suggested I try investing was my parents. Although Jack's salary alone was enough for us as a couple to live comfortably, I always wanted to contribute something to our finances. My father was knowledgeable about investments, and when I expressed interest, he taught me hands-on how to invest. Under my father's guidance, I began investing little by little, initially aiming to make even a small profit. I first started investing about 5 years ago. Since then, I've honed my skills considerably. Now I've become so proficient that even my father exclaims,
I never thought you'd grow this much.
The $6 million recorded in the passbook Jack brought was the profit I earned over those 5 years. I was going to tell you eventually, but then cancer hit me and you suddenly started to claim divorce. What could have been done? I never intended to take this secret to the grave. Once I recovered from cancer and could return to a normal life, I had planned to confide in Jack about the $6 million and, as a couple, intended to share the money to ensure our life together. But before that could happen, Jack made the unilateral decision to divorce. It would be absurd to share the money with someone who's no longer my husband. Given the circumstances, all $6 million will probably be mine. Hearing my story, Jack's face turned red with rage.
If I had known you had this much money, I wouldn't have divorced. You're at fault for not revealing it immediately. Pay me alimony right now. $6 million. Compensate for the sin of keeping secrets from your husband.
Faced with such a vast sum, Jack seems to be either overwhelmed or simply unable to accept that he won't be getting the money. Either way, he's making outrageous demands. Now that we're divorced, no matter how things turn out, there's absolutely no way I'm giving the $6 million to Jack. And yet Jack is so desperate to get his hands on the $6 million right in front of him. He's saying absolutely unthinkable things. I couldn't help but chuckle.
What are you laughing at?
Jack said.
Enough with the disrespect. I've always been irritated by your attitude. Did you ever think it's arrogant for a wife to have such wealth? A wife's assets are her husband's. So, you should hand over these assets to me.
What do you mean a wife's assets belong to the husband? I never intended to keep the existence of this money hidden forever. It's just that you went ahead and divorced me before I could reveal it.
Stop making excuses. It's all your fault for keeping secrets.
Even though I don't recall making any ridiculous excuses, every time I speak, Jack turns bright red, accuses, blames, and belittles me. Frankly, as someone recovering from illness, Jack's shouting is hard to bear. It resonates in my head unbearably. It was clear that trying to discuss anything further would be futile. No matter what I say, Jack would probably never listen and continue to paint me as the villain. Once I realized that it was impossible to reason with Jack, my next move was swift. Please, stop it. You were the one who went ahead and divorced, right? You forced me to divorce, remember? I always knew you were cruel, but I never imagined you'd go this far. When one reaches their limit, can they really become this enraged? What I feel now is not the pain from cancer, but anger towards Jack. Raising my voice this way will undoubtedly affect my body, but my anger towards this selfish person who, while shamelessly sitting beside my bed and blaming me with every word he could think of, was unstoppable. When I was diagnosed with cancer, what do you think went through my mind? I thought maybe now Jack would worry about me a bit, that he might change his ways and start caring for me. Yet what did you do? You didn't visit me in the hospital, and when you finally did, you filed for divorce and claimed our house. Now that you know about my wealth, you come and blame me like this? Are you kidding me? I'll say it again. I never intended to keep it a secret forever. I was waiting for the right time to tell you. You destroyed that chance. I had never blamed Jack in this manner before. I always accepted Jack's selfish actions, thinking that we were a married couple and should stay together. Without making any complaints or holding any resentment, I always did my best for him. The reason I still wanted to make it work was because of my love for Jack. I truly loved him. But now, I feel no love for Jack. All I feel is an uncontrollable anger and disbelief towards a man who only says selfish things. How did he become so selfish? What kind of education does one receive to become such a person, completely devoid of consideration for others? While I am at a loss for words and utterly appalled, I realize it is futile to question this, as a person who would engage in infidelity, proceed with a divorce without consent, and expect sane reasoning from them is beyond comprehension.
Please, I'm begging you. She says she'll definitely divorce me unless I bring her $6 million, knowing that you have that amount. If I can't get that money from you, I'll be left all alone. You still love me, don't you? Don't you want to help me?
It seems that the woman Jack was cheating with has also found out about my $6 million in assets. He must have told her. From what I've heard from Jack, it appears that his mistress is also quite greedy. Birds of a feather flock together, I suppose. I couldn't help but think that they are well suited for each other, to such an extent that Jack's circumstances and whatever suffering he might endure in the future no longer mattered to me, and I was able to completely detach myself from him.
I'm really begging you. I'll do anything. Please, give me $6 million. If not, I'm going to be in big trouble. Please, help me out.
Saying so, Jack knelt down on the spot, begging me for it. I had never seen Jack this desperate before, and his state seemed utterly ridiculous to me. At the same time, I felt a mix of disappointment and despair, akin to the feelings of having been let down because he never showed such desperation for me. The more we talked, the colder my feelings for Jack became. I couldn't help but feel that continuing the conversation was pointless. The more I interacted with this rotten man, the more I became certain that it would not lead to my happiness. I couldn't help but think that I was foolish for suffering and struggling for such a selfish man, and for expecting, even during my illness, that he might show his face someday. Despite my feelings, Jack continued to beg desperately, saying,
Please, I'm begging you.
And,
help me.
Listening to Jack's words any longer became the most painful thing for me. Please leave. As I said this, Jack began to plead.
Don't say things like that.
Adopting a buttering up attitude. Even that was unbearable to me at this point. I pressed the nurse call button and called the nurse. After explaining the situation and asking them to remove Jack, the nurse called the security guard and Jack was escorted out.
Please, just hear me out. You're the only one who can help.
He kept declaring this until the end, but I completely shut out his words. Even after that, Jack frequently visited the hospital. However, since the nurses were aware of the situation, he was never allowed to enter my room. According to my friends, since Jack couldn't secure the $6 million, the woman he had an affair with proposed a divorce, and now he's single. On the other hand, I continued to bravely fight against my cancer, and just recently I was declared completely healed and was able to be discharged from the hospital. Thanks to overcoming my illness, my body now feels invigorated. The sensation of being healthy again is more precious than anything else. Currently, I'm using a portion of the $6 million I have saved up, and I'm leading a relaxed life. To be honest, I'm already 50 and have had enough of marriage. I think I'll probably live out the rest of my life alone. I feel there's nothing wrong with living my life unbound by anyone.